Carlos will be the Philippines' first female national security advisor in decades.
Gender doesn't matter, and we will prove it to them.
You know, red tagging is just labeling people. It's really a lazy way of IDing people. Sa mga red tagging na yan, because it denigrates people and walang ka-defense, lalo na sa social media. Sinisigaw-sigaw mo, at sa ganito, no? Tapos nanahira ka na ng tao, tapos sasabihin mo, ay mali, hindi pala. Let's not do that.
President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. will bring in retired UP Professor Clarita Carlos to be the country's next national security advisor. Carlos has already expressed her position against red tagging, which was welcomed even by members of the opposition. What other changes will Carlos implement in her role as the Director General of the National Security Council? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. We will be joined by our guest and the other chiefs when we return. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Also with us, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. And kasama ko po dito sa studio, Ed Lingao of One News. Good evening. Mukhang tayong dalawa pa lang pala.
Tayong dalawa lang.
Sorry.
Well, it's a Thursday, so...
Siningit ni Ami yung attendance dito. Akala ko, style. Sige, anyway, ano bang mga balita? Quickly, Ed.
Well, among other things, Cebu, bumukod na naman sila in the sense that they already ordered na hindi kailangan face mask outdoors. But kailangan pa rin ng face mask indoors.
Tapos ano pa ba? Maya-maya pag-uusapan din natin, National Security Advisor.
Yes, we will bring her in a little bit. She had an
Professor
interview
Clarita Carlos.
Yeah. She also had an interview kanina with, sa totoo lang
Sige. But anyway, sa ngayon, umpisahan po natin. Tuloy lang natin pinag-uusapan this past week, these past days, yung pagtaas ng presyo ng gasolina, our energy issues, and so on. Joining us, Energy Undersecretary Gerardo Jerpy Arguiza. Good evening and welcome back to The Chiefs, Undersecretary Arguiza.
Hi, good evening, Rob. Good evening, Ed.
Hi, sir.
It's good to be back again. Thank you.
And welcome back, sir. Diretso muna tayo sa ng mata. Nagtataasan ng presyo ng gasolina. Dati, you said 100 pesos per liter. Medyo unlikely. Paninindigan ba natin yon? Hindi ba tayo talaga hampas doon?
Wala naman tayong mga dramatic, extreme factors right now. Although, from time to time, slightly tumataas siya. But ito yung mga consistent factors arising from the Russian-Ukraine war. Just recently, the European Union just declared the stopping all supplies coming from Russia by the end of the year, and China just went back to its economic activities. No, yung lockdown niya talagang tinigil na niya. So merong increase in our demand lately. Kaya slightly nakita natin in daily trading medyo pumatak, but not as high as last year. In the past 3 days, merong movement, but last week mas mataas siya. But we'll see the next 2 days, this Thursday and tomorrow Friday, and this will be average again. But we have some optimistic events happening. The OPEC will be increasing production by July to cope up with the demand. So hopefully OPEC will do its commitment and produce 648 additional thousand barrels per day.
But what does that mean, Yusek? Does that essentially mean that until July and until we see some action from OPEC, it's hard to say when the worst will be over?
Yeah, mahirap din. But just what I've said, wala naman tayong mga extreme scenarios right now, dramatic factors that will say that will show that we will have sudden increases in the prices. It is the same factors like the Russian-Ukraine war. Yun lang naman nangyayari. So, and mga economic activities na demand.
Yes, sir. Pero sir, at the same time, di ba nga, everybody averages the 5-day work week to come up with the new price for the next week. And now we're ending the 4th day already. So by which time you already have 4/5 of your equation.
Yeah, mas mababa pa rin siya. Mas mababa rin siya kaysa last week.
So naman, that's not very comforting kung mababa eh. Ang taas ng last week.
But we still have tomorrow, of course, Friday. Pero makita na yung last week kasi talagang pumalo yung declaration ng European Union and yung sa China. So we'll see how this kasi alam mo yung isalita lang, isang statement lang from a certain organization, nag-iiba yung takbo eh. Yeah, there's certain degree of optimism sa market, talagang gumaganda rin yung presyo. We'll be able to quantify all of this that are happening by next week. Makikita natin how it's affecting the world market.
Pero sir, earlier you were quoted as saying earlier in the week na likely ang pag-increase ulit by next week. Going past day 4, mukhang ganun pa rin ba? Mukhang tataas pa rin next week?
Merong fluctuation on the side of increase. So, pero sabi nga, mas mataas yung last week. At the same span of 3 to 4 days, mas mataas yung tumaas na fluctuation.
Yusek, alam ko, it's hard to pin down targets given that everything is a moving target and all the factors are dynamic. Nonetheless, balikan ko lang po yung OPEC intervention and potential action in July. Should that come to pass, do we have an idea of how that actually impacts the prices, especially at the retail level?
Kasi basically our problem is we're having very tight demand, a very huge demand, and lack of production in the market. Ang kinukuha na, kaya nagmamahal din yan, ang kinukuha na rin natin yung mga reserve. No? Parang it's just like rice, when it's in the warehouse, pag nilabas mo yan, nakatago yan, mahal yung presyo niya. So, ginagalaw na yung mga reserve from the outside. And, but supply-wise, wala naman tayong problema. Nagko-cope up naman tayo sa mga pangangailangan natin. And so far as the Philippines is concerned, we have contracts, our oil companies. And we've been monitoring this. There's this requirement as a matter of policy that there should be a minimum period of inventory of 30 days and around 40 to 47 days ang inventory natin. Hindi naman nawawala yung supply natin at we are assured by the oil companies that their contracts will continue. Wala namang disruption sa mga supply nila.
Sir, yung EU ban on Russian oil exports, tumama na ba yung impact nun sa atin or is it still forthcoming?
Yung EU ban kasi, it's not as direct as the countries in the Europe. No? Kasi doon mismo talagang direct supply ang
Yes, sir.
tumatama sa kanila. Pero tayo, we are getting from the Middle East, no? And therefore, these European countries are competing now with us.
Yes, sir.
From other sources like Middle East. Kaya hindi tayo masyadong, I think we're luckier than the others. No? And China, where we get 30% of our supply, finished products, no? Has good bilateral relations with Russia. And it appears that Russia has been continuously supplying China. Itong Asian side, walang problema kasi yung route, no, hindi dumadaan ito ng Ukraine. Samantalang this route going to Europe, it passes through Ukraine. Ito, diretso sa China, merong mga rota dito at hindi na-apektuhan.
Yes, sir. Pero sir, if we're only buying 30% of our oil supplies from China, I suppose that means that we're buying 60 to 70% of our oil from the Middle East, which is the same pot that the EU will be drawing from now, which also means that we will be competing over the same pool, and I suppose that also means constriction of supply and inflation of price.
We're also getting from Japan. We have also supplies coming from Korea, South Korea. And these countries are getting also from Russia. No? Except that recently, the other day, there's a news that Japan's supplies, no, they stopped production in the refineries. No? So ito hindi lang yung supply, pati yung refineries nag-decrease ng production dito sa Japan, and we're getting from them. So yung constriction, it contributes now to the tight supply to the countries. No? Pero itong sa Middle East, basically, most that we get here are crude oil, and we have a refinery here, yung sa Petron. No? Doon kinukuha ang crude oil. So there are two kinds of oil products that we get. The crude oil itself, it's refined, and finished products.
Okay. Yusek Ergiza, beyond the current crisis, where do you see talks about oil deregulation going with this particular incoming government and the incoming Congress?
Well, I think all are the members of the Congress, both the senators and the congressman from the lower house, they're responding very well. We hear from them that they would like to pursue revisiting the oil deregulation law. We know for a fact that before the oil deregulation law, we had another system. We are using the oil price stabilization fund. No? It's a buffer. Ang sistema natin noon the price is being approved by the Energy Regulatory Board. And oil companies file their petitions, and they prove that the price that they want to be the cost of their products are okay, are reasonable. But now wala na. No? Under the law, nandun mismo that the starting point, the benchmark will be the world market price. So we see now the difference between these two systems. No? We see a system of regulation, and now we see a system of no regulation at all. And therefore, when the Congress starts this time, they will see the balance between the two, which is better.
So give us an idea. Let's say theoretically pumasa yung deregulation. The government, the DOE has the power to intervene. Give us an idea of what will be, for example, the immediate actions of the DOE.
Well, there are two things that we're looking at this. Una, do we give authority to the government to regulate prices? So alam mo naman, andito market forces, no, ang ating sinusundan ngayon na policy globally, no. So ito pag-uusapan nila maigi yan. To what extent na should we have the government intervene? And of course, mahabang debate yan. But insofar as we're concerned sa DOE, we're very much more interested now in the unbundling of the cost of oil. No? You know, ang cost of oil kasi, tinatawag na yung benchmark world price. May additional price pa ito, yung administrative, operational, the freight, transportation, insurance. Dinadagdagan yan. Sabihin na lang natin that the world market price is A, and all the other additional costs are B, C, D, E, F. No? And ang sinabi ng DOE dito is dapat we should be given the authority now to look into these other factors, and we call this unbundling. So the Department of Energy came out with a circular, no, requiring the unbundling. But some of the oil companies filed a case before a regional trial court, and a TRO was issued by the court. That's why we're not able to implement this. Now with this problem going on, we have included this in our proposal in the amendment of the oil regulation law to see to it that the unbundling will be allowed. So this debate has started on this one, and some of our lawmakers have saw the rationale behind this, and they're supporting it.
Pero sir, ang tagal lang kasi napag-usapan yung unbundling proposal na yun. I know there's a TRO, and I know that your next recourse is to get a law out that will amend the regulation law. Pero my question is this: we're moving into a new administration in 3 weeks. Has there been any discussion as to whether or not the next Congress and the next administration is going to support any move to pass a law that will amend the oil regulation law?
Well, with respect to the administration, kasi bago the executive branch, no. So we have prepared a transition report, no. So what the next administration will adopt, of course, we have to respect that. Hindi natin alam at ayaw din natin pangunahan. But insofar as the Congress is concerned, no, it's another branch of government, and we have almost the same people who are there. We heard that they will be continuing what most of them have started. Kasi in the last Congress kasama sila eh. Kaya naabutan lang sila ng elections. And itutuloy nila itong tuloy-tuloy na pagdinig dito sa proposal to revisit the oil regulation.
Okay. Outside of oil, you mentioned the transition board. You're preparing for, of course, to help the next administration come in. I'm just curious, what will be the recommendations there with regards to non-oil energy, alternative energy, and for that matter, nuclear power?
I think there's an alignment between the outgoing administration and the incoming administration. It just so happened that I chaired the nuclear energy program of the Department of Energy, and I preside over the meeting of the nuclear energy program interagency committee, and we came out with recommendations. No? And we have this framework on dealing with our nuclear energy program, where the outgoing president, Rodrigo Duterte, issued an executive order 164 directing adoption of an energy mix which would include nuclear. No? And we heard, during the campaign also, the energy agenda of the incoming president. Nakita natin that he is really bent on pushing our nuclear energy program. So maganda ho yun. Alam niyo yung the program we have, it is what we call the four cornerstone. We have to align with international standards. We have to consider stakeholders' acceptance and consultation, and also the regulatory framework. And we already have started the process. Pag gagawin pa ito by the next administration, it will take another 3 to 5 years. Pero naumpisahan na. And all that remains now is the finalization and crafting of the regulatory framework of the nuclear energy program. So, right now, while we are waiting for the next administration, we have lots of members of Congress already who have asked for our copies, the bills to draft, so that they would sponsor it in the next Congress.
As far as you know, as far as you understand, as far as you appreciate from your conversations with the incoming government and their representatives, does nuclear power and being open to it necessarily equate to BNPP?
Not necessarily. When we talk of nuclear power right now, it's the nuclear energy program. It's the framework. But when you now implement the nuclear energy program, you will you can put up all power plants of the different technologies or different sizes or different styles. And there's an innovation on nuclear power right now or energy. It's the small modular reactors. So one of the, of course, recommendations before was that as a proof of concept, let's try first the modular reactors. Then, as a matter of course, the Bataan nuclear power plant would come in. No? But we had a survey. The generation now is very different. The survey showed that more than 70% of the people right now are favorable in the rehabilitation of the Bataan nuclear power plant, and more than 60% favored the putting up of a nuclear power plant. Kaya ibang-iba na yung generation that yan. So based on that, we crafted a strategic communication plan to see to it that the process of consultation will continue, because we know that the people then were polarized in the previous in recent years, no? Because of this adoption of nuclear power.
Yusek, kasama na rin po natin si Ami Pamintuan. She's joining us from the port area at the Philippine Star offices. Baka may tanong ka, Ami, kay Undersecretary Ergisa.
Hi, Ma'am Ami. Good
Good
evening.
evening, Yusek. Sorry, I'm late. Pahabol ko lang kasi may statement ngayon yung PIDS, no, state run. Sabi nila kapag yung oil deregulation, yung mga subsidies, state subsidies, it benefits only the rich daw. Saka, yun na nga, may mga nag-aalala na it will are you ready? Is the next administration ready to politicize fuel pricing again? Ano po yung masasabi niyo?
Well, kasi ang problema natin dito, ma'am, framework. So it will be actually Congress that will be dealing with this. Ang sinasabi natin dito na pinag-usapan, we should revisit the legal framework. And therefore, if it's the Congress that would come in, it will be a series of long debates. So pag-uusapan yan, magdidebate sa Kongreso. Siyempre, the input of the administration, the executive branch, will be secured by Congress. But at the end of the day, the result will be coming out because of long debates and discussions and inputs from all the sectors in the society.
Okay.
Okay.
Sir, pahabol lang. A couple of weeks ago, naglabas ang DOF ng consolidated fiscal proposals for the next administration. That includes, among other things, increasing by 1 peso yung excise taxes on oil products by the second year of the incoming administration. I'm wondering kung dumaan sa inyo ito and what your views are of that.
Well, number one, when it comes to fiscal measures, the finance team, sila ang sila ang nag-aaral dyan na masusi. No? But if we'll go back to what happened previously, alam niyo nung tumaas yung gasolina, it was the Department of Energy that called for the suspension of the excise tax.
Yeah.
Of course, when it was heard in Congress, nilabas ng finance ang kanilang posisyon that if you remove the subsidy, about 70 to 80% na kaya naman nila magbayad ng gasolina, it will benefit from the subsidy. So, ang naging approach now is we'll just have a targeted sector. Kung sino talaga yung tatamaan, like the transport, the farmers and the fishermen. And we call this now the subsidy strategy. So, targeted sila. Ginawang subsidy na lang ito instead of suspending the excise tax.
Okay. Energy Undersecretary Jerpy Ergisa. Sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you very
Thank you, sir.
much. Thank you very much, Rob, Ed, and Mama. Good evening po.
Please stay with us. We'll take a break. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to the Chiefs here on One News. And now joining us is incoming National Security Advisor, Professor Clarita Carlos. Professor Carlos, ma'am, magandang gabi. And thank you for joining us. Welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening, Professor.
Good evening po.
Ay, good evening sa inyong tatlo.
Good evening po. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I'll refer to a previous interview you had. Actually, kanina lang dito in the same station. You said that we have not been rooting out or not been paying close attention to what you call the critical variables in the insurgency, which remains to be a major security threat. But on the other hand po, the NTF-ELCAC was supposed to address that problem by having a whole-of-nation, whole-of-government approach, which in a way does make sense nga naman whole-of-nation approach. We're wondering lang po, as incoming NSA, do you see any changes or any tweaking that you would like to put in doon sa insurgency approach natin as far as, for example, how government perceives its enemies, how government identifies its enemies, and how government deals with its enemies?
Yeah, siguro, Ed, I'm not privy to the nitty-gritty of these programs, although, over the years, I have seen documentations as well as critiques some of them. If at all there will be input from my end, it will really be to make sure that they are crocheted together, that the efforts are integrated, and that is, coordination and communication among the actors involved. Kasi many times you create silos and people are not even aware that, there had been certain successes here and certain failures. Parang wala bang exchange ng narratives. And I think that is the one that we might be able, to the extent that, that is within the jurisdiction of my mandate, would be able to do. No?
Well, while you're talking about the human security dimension to the battle against communist insurgency, can you expound more on that? Yung approach na kukunin ng NTF-ELCAC, because the people in NTF-ELCAC are now saying, if the incoming administration will pursue their tack, pwede daw matapos tong insurgency within the time of President-elect Bongbong Marcos. So,
Well, I hope siguro, I hope the projections are good. Kaya lang, I'm sure, ang dami ka nang nakitang promesa and threats na yung ganito, within X number of years it will finish and they have mud on their faces, no? Huwag na silang magsabi-sabi ng mga time dimension yan. Just do their work. And as I said, I think from the little that I know right now, I'm sure I will know better, some deeper understanding of this. Kailangan talaga ng masusing integration and coordination, no? Yung mga fragmented efforts na yan. And yes, while I'm saying as a social scientist that I will pay attention to human security, it doesn't mean that I will not pay attention to its military component. Kasi na-raise na naman ang issue, ba't na naman si Carlos, babae yan? Ano ngayon? Kung babae ako, parang ni-raise mo na yung issue na yan. Tama, Ami. Hello.
Hello.
Hindi, alam ni Ed dito 22 years ago, ni-raise na yan sa akin, di ba? Nagpupusta-pustahan yung mga tao. Ayan, si Carlos, walang 1 week yan. Dadapa na yan as President of the National Defense College. Gender doesn't matter, no? At maganda siguro, hindi ko naman sa binabaliwala yung military perspective. Ang sinasabi ko, alam mo, ni-research ko nga yung, anong pangalan nila? Yung Tagalog version ng security. Alam mong nakita kong pinakamalapit, Ami? Katiwasayan ng kalooban. No? Katiwasayan ng kalooban at kasiguruhan na paglabas ko ng bahay ko, na walang babaril sa akin. Na ngayon 76 na ako, if I live well, that I can live up to 100. Mga ganun ba? Yung mga kasiguruhan ko, if you were a young parent, na ang iyong anak ay magpupunta sa eskwelahan, mag-e-end na architect, engineer, etc. Kasiguruhan na pag binukas ko yung gripo ko, pwede kong inumin yung tubig like dito sa UP dahil ang linis-linis ng tubig. All those things, di ba? Ngayon, wala tayong kasiguruhan na yung hindi lalampas ng 100 pesos per liter yung diesel, di ba? So meron tayong sense of insecurity. And it's not even the businessman who needs a level of certainty. We all need a level of certainty in our lives or we will go mentally ill. Di ba, Ami?
Hindi lang po sa perspektibo, pero pati rin po sa strategy. What does, as you put it, the more humanitarian, the more holistic, the more sociological lens give to our, or should give to our strategies?
Siguro, Robbie, parang it's not the case that, I don't want to denigrate the military people who've been viewing this in a particular perspective. I'm simply saying, dagdagan nga natin recados natin diyan sa ating notion ng national security. It's really what I'm saying. Kasi parang ito, medyo nalubak ng konti. We were not paying attention to the consequences of climate change. And that is a very, very high threat, not only for our archipelago, but for the entire planet. Diba? So we really need to pay attention to those. Kaya nga, siyempre, kulang pa yung panahon ko dahil kailan ko lang ba nakausap si President Marcos? Hapon, di ba? Hapon na. Tapos umuwi nga ako, gabi na dahil minute ko pa naman si Senator Juan Ponce Enrile, no? So talagang konti lang yung time ko na mag-research kaninang umaga to find out ano ba tong NSA at ano ba yung kanyang mandato. And nakita ko talagang broadly conceived, no? And yes, it's a rather potent position. Not that I would want to be, powerful, etc. But it really goes into the heart of what we need to do as a nation and banking on a national strategy.
Ano nga po ba ang binanggit sa inyo ni incoming President Bongbong Marcos?
Actually, Robin, nung nag-usap-usap kami na matagal, no? Ang dami namin pinag-usapan, education, ang dami namin pinag-usapan. And magbibit-bit na ako ng aking bag, talagang mag-i-end na yung dahil andun na yung next appointment niya. Saka lang niya sinabi, by the way, Professor Carlos, may I know if you're accepting the position of my National Security Advisor? So sabi ko, yes, I will. Ayun, tapos na. Tapos nagkodakan na kami. No? Pero before then, wala nang, we were just talking about local politics, we were talking about the dynamics of the campaign, etc. Yun ang laman ng aming pag-uusap ng, I don't know, more than 1 hour kahapon.
Ma'am, you have the advantage of having dealt with both camps. You were for several years NDCP president. At the same time, you were for several decades with UP. So you bring to the table a lot of perspectives, and sometimes possibly even differing perspectives from different camps. I'm wondering, what lessons, or maybe lessons is the wrong word, what perspectives or what new perspectives should, for example, people in the military have with regard to people in the academe, people who are progressive, and vice versa? Kumbaga, what should each camp know of each other more?
Well, first off, no, ang daming sanga-sanga ng question mo, Ed. We are in a liberal democracy, which means we allow for all voices to be heard and to be articulated. But at the same time, because we are working also under the principle of majority rule, whichever number is biggest, because no one will vote to harm himself, no? We should abide by it. But there are also minority rights. No? Now, what new? It's not really new perspective. Maybe, how would I call it? It's a composite of perspective over 56 years of my professional life as a political scientist. Empirical evidence after empirical evidence will demonstrate to us, doesn't even need to be our example, many examples of insurgencies all over the world, the military route always fails. No? Alam mo na nga, magpifail yan, paulit-ulit ka ba? Sobra naman ang pagka-stupido mo. Di magpunta ka sa ibang ruta. And the ibang ruta is really, yung sinabi mo kanina, Ed, i-root out mo yung source ng injustice, yung source talaga ng kanyang bakit niya nilalabanan ng gobyerno. Kasi wala siyang opportunity na maging human being. Wala siyang opportunity tulad natin na mangarap na maging architect, journalist, etc. Bigyan mo sa kanya yung opportunity na yan para hindi siya humawak ng baril. Di ba? It seems very simple. And yet, on the ground, pag nire-realize mo na yan, it really becomes a very complex social phenomenon. So we know that already coming in.
Yeah, it will take a whole of nation approach, and it will take I think the entire cabinet will need to work on it. You think this is the track of the incoming administration? Halimbawa, if you're going to discuss it with President Marcos, you will have to present this, di ba, na kailangan lahat tayo ganito. If we want to address the human security aspects of peace and order.
Yeah, tama ka, Ami. Pero dapat, pag nag-present ako sa kanya, may roadmap ako. Meron ako mga arrows. May mga solid arrows, the lines of authority. May mga broken arrows. Yung ang lines of authority hindi clear. Because hindi ko naman alam talaga, I mean, as a social scientist, hindi ko alam and I will still have to test it on the ground. Ano kaya ng relationship nitong factor na to another factor? But since we have had decades and decades of experience, no, sabi ko kanina talagang integration eh. Nakakalat yung ano na yan, documentation na yan, no? And really, even I, no, realizing its need, have not had the time nor the wherewithal to really put them together. No, if we can stitch and crochet them together, at meron kang isang roadmap, then you'll say, doon pa sa roadmap na yon, di ba may status ka ng, ito failure. Then pag-aralan natin, bakit kasi failure to? Ito mga successes. And the literature that I have seen, mas maraming successes kaysa sa failure. So bakit hindi natin pagyamanin yung success? Ulit-ulitin mo siya, i-replicate mo siya under different geographies. Diba?
Sige nga, role model. Sino ang role model? Sample.
I'm not talking of any role model. You mean a human being? I'm
No,
talking
no,
of a model. No, it's
Yeah.
a model. It's a roadmap, no? It's a roadmap na may EDSA, may Shaw Boulevard, merong maliliit na alis. If you can design that, even in broad strokes, tapos ibaba mo, andyan naman ang datos eh. The data are there. And yeah, even when I assume the office on July 1, that would be the first things that I will do, because insurgency is really one of our biggest threats, because it is addressing really the political violence that may come out of it because of the sheer inequality of human beings, of 110 Filipinos. Di ba? Pag mahirap ka, wala naman katuturan buhay mo, humawak ka na lang ng barel, mamatay at pumatay.
Yeah,
Di ba
Professor,
yun ang psychology noon? And we know that already.
Professor,
So, alam na natin yan.
Professor, in earlier interviews, including in this network, you touched on the issue, the problem of red tagging from different agencies, from different officers. You acknowledged, and I agree with you, that it's not only not helpful, it's very damaging, it can be counterproductive, it can be very harmful. And I actually like the word that you use. It's lazy. That at the end of the day, parang trabahong tamad. And sa trabahong tamad na yon, you can judge people, you can prosecute them, you can kill them, and it's very lazy. You obviously have the president's ear, and you're in a very influential position now. Do you think, are you confident that you would have enough suasion and enough mandate to put an end to this practice of red tagging?
Tama ka, Robbie, no? Maybe impolite and cruel to use the word lazy, but I cannot find another word eh. Kasi sa akin, Robbie, pag naubusan ka na ng argument, wala mang bato ka na lang, gawin mo na ng label.
Yeah,
Alam mo,
exactly.
si Ami, komunista yan, socialista, etc. like that, no? Kaya nga, it's a lazy route to... Why are you IDing people with labels, no? Siyempre, hihingan kita ng definition of terms. So, ano ba ibig sabihin mo communist? Wala nang communist ngayon. Tayo na lang gumagamit ng term na yan. So, you're just wasting yung... Sinasayang mo lang yung laway mo doing that. This red tagging should stop. No? Whatever effort you have left, ay pakialaman ninyo yung things on the ground, yung sinabi na natin kanina. Stop this red tagging. Hindi nga productive. Tama nga si Robbie. Unproductive.
Pero yun nga
Zero
po,
yung
parang-
produkto mo dyan. So, ba't mo pa ulit-ulitin yan, ano?
But can the president, are you confident, can anybody just simply crack the whip? Because parati sasabihin ng mga nagre-red tag naman, wala nga sa batas yan, wala nga kaming definition, that paikot-ikot tayo about, splitting hairs about what exactly they're doing when everybody sees it's wrong. Can our leaders simply crack the whip and say, look, simple lang, stop doing it?
Precisely, Robbie. One doesn't need to be a social scientist nor have an IQ of 140 to know that things that do not work, stop doing it. Diba? Meron ka bang nakikitang katuturan yung ginagawa nilang red tagging? Wala, di ba? So, nagsasayang ka lang ng effort, no? Nagsasayang ka lang ng space sa social media. Tapusin mo na yan. Because red tagging does not work. It does not solve the problem. What will solve the problem is what we have described earlier. Pakialaman mo yung sense of injustice nila, which is really ranked, no? Pakialaman mo yung wala silang oportunidad na maging, na yung quality of life nila. Kamukha ng quality of life natin. Palagay mo ba yan, hindi rin gusto niyang humiga sa kama at walang mga linta-linta at nandun sila sa bundok? Of course, they want to live the same quality of life that we have. But hindi natin ibigay sa kanila yun. Di ba fairly simple? But yes, tigilan na natin yung mga military operations. Yes, yung military operations, tugisin mo sila. Tugisin mo yung hijackers, yung mga kriminal. Hindi mo na kailangan ng special laws eh. Huwag mo silang sabihin insurgent, sabihin mo sila ay hijacker, criminal, naghihingi ng ransom, nagkikidnap ng tao. Kasi pag ginamit mo yung word na insurgency, parang nabibigyan sila ng ibang kind of legal personality which should not be there. We have everything in our penal laws to run after them. Di ba?
What about the classification of terrorists? Kasi we have an anti-terrorism council and kasama kayo dun sa mga opisyal na magka-classify ng certain groups or persons if they are terrorists or not. Ano ba sa tingin nyo yung classification of a terrorist? How do you describe a terrorist?
Alam mo, Ami, tinuturo ko yan sa isang part ng isang chapter ng aking geopolitics class because it affects interstate relations. Pag tinignan mo yung literature, malulunod ka more than 150 ang definitions. Ang UN nga, ang dami-dami na nila, di ba 200 sila doon? They cannot arrive at a consensus on what is the meaning of a terrorist. Bakit ka mo? Sapagkat it is so politically laden. I'm sure alam mo na yung corning dictum na one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, di ba? So ibahin mo lang yung, ewan ko kung napanood yung movie na The Vantage Point. It's really one of the most potent demonstration of why we have multiple perspectives and why you have to pay attention to so many stories. There is no one story. Kaya siguro to the extent that, dahil hindi ko pa nga alam ang mandato ng opisina ko, Ami, ay sana wag nating gamitin na loosely yung word na terrorist tapos of course, sa Amerika, pag sinabing terrorist ka, maraming mga financial and other, di ba, mga sanctions related to that. But even they, alam mo, duruin mo yan, tanungin mo, sino ba yung terrorista? No? Tignan mo yung social science literature. Walang isang definition ng what is terrorism.
Ma'am, although I'm wondering lang, I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm wondering lang how the dynamics will be in the next administration, given na at least in this administration, very strident yung paggamit ng katagang terrorist for just about a lot of people who disagree with government, whether they're because they're communist insurgents or whether they're with the legal left
Journalist.
or even journalists. So I'm wondering lang moving forward po, paano magiging dynamics niyan between you and the military establishment?
That's why the precision of terms is very, very important. The precision of terms is very important. Kasi kung definition of terms, hindi na tayo magkaano ano ba yung katuturan na we move forward from there? Hindi ba nakita mo dun sa ginawa mong dissertation o kaya thesis mo, hindi ba yung second chapter mo, definition of terms? Kasi gusto mong malaman, ano ba yung elderly? Ang elderly mo ba 56 o 60 or 65? Para malaman natin ano ba yung sinasabi mo, Ami. Kasi pagka kinritik ko yung conclusion mo, titignan ko yung definition of terms. Ano yung definition of terms? Definition of terms are very, very crucial. No? That's why precision in the use of terms is important. Yung sinabi mo nga kanina, Ed, no? Huwag mo nang gamitin yung word na terrorist. Sabihin mo siya, hijacker siya, tapos criminal siya, tapos namamatay tao siya, murderer. Andiyan naman lahat sa penal law siyang, titles na yan eh. Kasi yung word nga na terrorist, ay napakarami niyang political and financial implications, especially as it is used by the Western world.
Okay.
And why not? You just demand precision in the use of terms. No? Umpisa pa na ng meeting, sabihin mo, okay, we're using this term. Ilahad nga natin. That's why I keep on asking about its operational definition. Kasi pag humingi ka ng operational definition, makikita mo things which you can observe. Makikita mo, hindi ba, tignan mo yung corny na salita na I love you, Ami. Ami, I love you, ha? Ibig sabihin dali mo yung mga libro ko, sunduin mo ko araw-araw, etc. Siyempre, iba-iba naman. Of course, I'm just exaggerating to make a point. Kung hindi tayo nag-consensus on ano ibig sabihin ng verb na yon, mag-aaway tayo at mag-separate tayo, di ba? So, precision in the use of terms is very, very important.
Okay, ma'am, let me zoom in to NTF-ELCAC again. I mean, given everything that we've discussed, what you want to do, what you want to achieve, but also, in fairness, gaya na nabanggit ni Ed, and even legislators have emphasized that, yung NTF-ELCAC, nung ginawa yan, it was really a whole-of-society approach. It was supposed to be an interdepartmental effort para sugpuin the root causes of the insurgency, not just the insurgency itself. Notwithstanding that, we got into this conversation about red tagging precisely because of that's how it's branded right now. That's how people perceive NTF-ELCAC. I've spoken even with military officers who frankly were frustrated by some rotten apples that have tainted the entire barrel. What do you think we should do with the NTF-ELCAC?
Well, we should do some changes with lots of difficulty. But yes, nothing is cast in granite, no? Nothing is cast in stone. So if already among the people implementing them, there is no consensus on the definition of terms, ano pa yung katuturan yan? Paano ka pa magpo-progress from the definition of terms? Iba-iba nga yung definition mo. That's the reason why, in the first instance, wag mag-red tag because it doesn't produce any effect at all, any beneficial effect at all. If there is already consensus there, then you move forward. What works, what doesn't work? What are the factors and forces, the composite that will bring about success? What are the things that have brought about failure? You make those kinds of dissection of things, then those things which are success, i-replicate mo. Yung failure, katangahan mo na kung paulit-ulit pa, alam mo na nga may lubak dyan sige ka pang paulit-ulit. It sounds simple, di ba? But on the ground, I'm sure, because personalities get in the way, no? Kanya, people say I'm super arrogant, mayabang, hindi. No, I'm not. I'm a straightforward, talking person. If it's there, it's there. If it's not there, I shut up. Di ba?
Well, I'm sure you're aware of some of the duties of the NTF-ELCAC. You think there's still a need to continue with it at this point? Or kahit man lang name change, kasi yung specifically, to end the communist conflict. You think there's a need to just get rid of it entirely or some change?
Siguro, Ami, bigyan mo ako ng panahon na kalkalin ko yan, at basahin ko yan at great depth and better understanding. Kasi ako talaga allergic yan sa word na communist kasi wala makapagbigay sa akin ng definition kung sino siya. No? And yet we just use it so freely, parang left, center, right. And yung left, center, right, it's no longer an IDing, it's no longer an IDing term, no? I'm left on this thing. I'm left on abortion. I am right on this issue area. One is not consistently left or center or right, but I am consistently left of center because I'm a scientist, I'm a scholar, and I want to improve the world. Yun na siguro yung concept, but otherwise, those words leftist, centrist, and we just use them so freely. We don't even know what they look like. Diba? Precision in the use of terms, again, no? Siguro pag ito yung guro sa akin paulit-ulit ko. Huwag kang gagamit ng word na walang empirical reference, di ba? Ang una kong lecture, Ami, sa klase, lagay ko dun sa blackboard, I love you forever. Ano yan yung conceptually na di yung forever, wala namang
Natawa yung dalawang lalaki, natawa yung dalawang lalaki.
Makinig kayo, hoy, Robbie and Ed, ha?
Mea culpa.
Ma'am, speaking of precision in terms, I hope you don't mind. I'll bring in a moment that you had with the then candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Nag-viral kayo because of a question and his answer. Now that you've spoken to him as the incoming president and as the incoming national security advisor yourself, let me ask you, are we going to have a Machiavellian for a president?
I hope so. I'm Machiavellian myself. Kasi, Robbie, people who have not read Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince and the Discourses have really no business debating on what Machiavelli means. Kasi yung Machiavellian prince, the Machiavellian leader, has the moral imperative. He must be a moral a person with moral probity, and he knows how to read the public good. Even among political scientists, hanggang ngayon binubuno nila yung what does Machiavelli mean? And as I said, I'm Machiavellian because, within legal bounds, I will do whatever it takes to get my goal within legal bounds,
He
With all
also
these
said,
codicils, no?
Yeah, he
People
also
simply say na, ay, mali si Carlos, o di mali nga ako, i-argue mo nga. Kung hindi, nagpapakyut ka lang, you shut up, no? Teka, basahin mo muna yung discourses at saka the prince bago ka makipag-argue sa akin.
ako po hindi po ako makikipag-argue, but he also said it is he
Hindi,
also said
Karo,
he also said it's better to be feared than to be loved. And a lot of people will extrapolate that and read into that essentially that is also part of what people use to define a fascist. That any means to a desired end. And that's what people are really afraid of. Even if they're not experts in reading into this, that part I think people understand, and they've seen examples of it throughout history. They will cite the father of the incoming president, among other examples. But just in that basic understanding,
Tama ka, Robbie. And again, I'm sorry, people don't pay attention to context. Kasi pag kinuha mo lang siya without the basic premises, it will really mean differently. But if you have a choice between being feared and being loved, kasi may kadugtong pa yun, mahaba yung paragraph na yun. Because usually, you will abuse the person whom you love. No, kasi alam mong papatawarin ka. I'm sure even in our human experience, no. So, if you want citizenry to follow you, it is better for them to follow because they are fearing the sanctions. Ang palagi kong example, Ed, no, total palagi mo ako ini-interview sa NDCP. Ba't kaya hindi ako nagnakaw yun doon? Di siyempre natakot naman ako mapreso, Ami. Di ba the sanctions were? Di ba? So, bigyan mo ng context yung is better to be feared rather than love. Kung kukunin mo lang yung, hahalawin mo yun, aalisin mo yung konteksto niya, magkakamali ka talaga. No? And you can give any interpretation there that you wish, which is wrong.
But what does that say about the relationship that you see the government having with our citizenry? Given everything that you've discussed, we want... You've mentioned love, among other things. You've mentioned also that, we want a whole-of-nation approach. We want to get to the root of the problems. And the element of fear is something that plays into the hands of the purely militaristic approach, the hard hand, and fascism, as we mentioned. What does that say about the personality, the values, and the character of the government that we are anticipating?
Well, I think the quick and short answer there, although it will need more involved answers if we have, more time, would be that yes, let us look at the social contract. The social contract was set by John Locke. Why John Locke? Na Western philosopher? Kasi nangopya-ngopya tayo sa Amerikano. I'm sure, wag na tayong magpunta doon. Yung mga kinopya-kopya natin sa American Constitution, bakit kami Senate, hindi ka naman federal, etc. Kasi naman, napalukob tayo sa Amerikano for 50 years, di ba? Colony niya tayo. Kaya, then, we will move into why we need, in fact, to revise our 1987 Constitution. But yes, Robbie, kailangan natin i-review yung social contract between the governor and the governed. The governor should read what the public good is, and the public good is defined by the majority rule, but at the same time, we pay attention to the minority rights. Yun naman ang philosophical underpinning ng liberal democracy. Unless, we subscribe to another ideology. But I think I like liberal democracy because it allows us to speak out as we are speaking out right now. Minsan, minumura nga natin, leaders natin, hindi tayo napipreso. I-try nyo nga yan sa isang authoritarian regime.
Okay.
Diba?
Okay.
So, yeah. I
sige.
love living in a liberal democracy.
Okay. Professor Clarita Carlos, incoming National Security Advisor. Ma'am, maraming salamat po. We look forward to more conversations with you.
Always a pleasure, ma'am.
Thank you,
Sige.
Professor.
Sige. Good night sa inyong tatlo.
Good evening po. And that will be all for this edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Mami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.